What if literature and art could work like acupuncture? Small, little precise interventions that ripple out and shift the whole system. That's a question at the heart of Folly, the literary journal founded and edited by Makere Broadmore. Emily has built Folly into a space where philosophy, provocation, and playfulness collide, while also helping to nurture writers through the Wellington Writers Studio here on Cuba Street. Today, we're talking about editing, risk-taking, and whether publishing can be a tool for cultural change. This is Articulate. Thank you so much for coming in today, Emily. It's lovely to see you again, and welcome here.
Thank you.
I thought a good place to start for this interview specifically was with Folly itself. It's been described as more than a literary journal, almost a provocation. What role do you see it playing in the wider literary and artistic ecosystem here in Aotearoa?
Great question. With Folly, what we're trying to do is hold up the mirror to society. So each issue is very much in the year that it's been launched. We're really looking at what's going on right now in the world and in New Zealand, and what element can we really raise here to make people think about how they judge people, how, maybe where their opinions come from, and also where are those controversial and contradictory kind of beliefs that we have as humans, as multifaceted humans. You can hold a lot of different beliefs at once that contradict each other, so let's play into that.
I think issue 3 is coming out this year as well, Emily, of Folly. Our core question today is, can literature and art act as a kind of cultural acupuncture where it has little tiny interventions that can shift the whole system? What's your gut response to that question?
Absolutely. That's the whole point. Art is meant to teach people something, or show people something, raise something. Like I said, like hold the mirror up. It's the whole point of art. It should be political. It should be a bit touchy, and ultimately you want to make people feel a little bit uncomfortable, but not too uncomfortable.
I feel like cultural acupuncture, it also suggests little subtle pressure points, Emily. Can you give an example of a piece of writing or art that you felt changed the temperature of a conversation, even if it's just a little bit?
Of course. I could speak to issue 2, which was the award-winning issue last year. There was an interview that we carried out with Aaron Harpe, who's a local here in Wellington, and we didn't know where the conversation would go, and he ended up talking about, the title initially for the work was Being Maori in Woke Wellington, and we ended up altering it a little bit and getting a bit of a cross-party panel going to look at the final interview, because I felt as the editor, is this too much? Are his statements too much for where Wellington is right now? And ultimately we ran the interview almost exactly as he'd answered the questions and with his opinions. And while I was a little bit concerned, it was the piece that we heard the best feedback from across the political spectrum, because he was saying things that a lot of people didn't feel comfortable to say, but he was also saying it in a way that he had a right to speak, but also it was said very frankly, and I think with some respect and context as well. And the year before, David Cormack, who's a Wellington commentator, he sent in a piece which was a big surprise to me, because it was taking the Mickey out of the left. And I had expected him to send something in that, sort of took the mickey out of the right. And anyway, we ran the story, and the feedback was, oh, that's a little bit close to the bone, or wow, that was a little bit uncomfortable, but also it was the most widely shared story. And it's these little tiny pieces where you hold the mirror up and show people maybe the other side of the story, or maybe where their beliefs are, like I said before, actually contradicting each other or contradicting themselves. People's values, people can hold values dear which are contradictory.
It's little push points and kind of
Just make you think about it differently.
Yeah, totally. Do you think small independent journals like Folly, Emily, can spark those bigger shifts versus like a mainstream publishing giant because of, I suppose, the freedom that you have in that?
Totally. I mean, ultimately, some of the controversy Folly has had is because we are running a commercial model. We are working towards commercial of financial sustainability with our journal. But unlike a big publishing house, we're not publishing a rugby memoir. So we can publish these, they're all very short pieces of content, but little pieces of content that have a point or are trying to say something which just would not even be, they would be seen as too niche by a big commercial publisher.
Is that quite, do you feel like you've had to work up a bravery to publish a lot of that, Emily? I'm just thinking, or was that just part of the core kaupapa of starting Folly?
It was, but it came from a place of naivety. I just wanted to create something that I didn't see in the market and something that I would want to take on holiday and have on my coffee table. And it turned into a very clear, exactly, this is what Folly is now. Folly publishes, as we had some British media say, it's full of sexy stories. I was like, maybe 20% of it is sexy stories. Then we've got, an interview with the Reserve Bank chief economist, or, this interesting interview with this young Maori man in Wellington, or, so it's a really strange curation of content, which is designed to take people on a journey. It's meant to be entertaining. So you put in a fun little story, you put in something a bit crunchy, and then the crunchy bit's followed by a fun poem. So you just at the point where people might be like, oh, that's pushing my beliefs a little bit, then you take them back into a safe area where they'll be laughing.
Totally. You kind of touched on something there that I wanted to ask you about a little bit more in depth as well, around the link between literature and politics. I feel like it's to some extent always been entangled, and obviously Folly publishes highly political work as well, whether that's subtly or overtly. Do you think writers and editors should lean into that, or should they try to hold a space that resists more political framing?
I think when you try to be when you try to placate everyone or stay in a safe space, you're missing the point of art. There has to be a provocation there. Each issue has to have a provocation. And in art, what is the point if you're not trying to get a response? And that brings us back to this idea of cultural acupuncture, which was a term that just grew out of a conversation I had with our cover star this year, cover artist, Kirsha Cashel, who is an American artist and wife of the Mona Museum in Hobart's owner. And her and I were talking about this. We were talking about trolling, about provoking society, and this idea of acupuncture, in that you look at where the tightly bound up cultural moment is. What are people getting really wound up about right now? And let's just poke that. I used to, people said to me, Emily, you love poking the bear. And I'm like, yes, because when you poke the bear, you get a response. And that response is both fun, and it also gives you an idea of where society is right now.
And it also pushes the conversation forward, I feel like. Without that, how would we get anywhere?
Totally. And if you can do it in a way which is playful, which is what Folly's trying to do, then what I've found is people generally don't get offended. They go, okay, fair enough. You've just held up the mirror. I am contradicting myself. Cool, let's keep going.
Definitely. How do you see your role, Emily, as editor of Folly as well? And kind of, you have all these writers contributing work, but what is your role? Do you see yourself as more of a guide or a gatekeeper or something else, maybe a mix?
It's like being the captain of a ship, because we head off at the start of each year without a clear idea of where we're going to end up. And I might see an opportunity, or I might see a threat, and then I'm making a decision about where we go. And the work comes in. We don't know what the world is going to send us, right? And I always have this moment in about April each year where I say to the reading team, oh my God, we're not going to have an issue this year. Nothing good is coming in. Or, we haven't got, it's just not working. None of this content's right. And then it always works out and we end up having this incredible issue. But my role is to try and stay true to Folly. And every issue I end up in a situation with our production team where they're nervous. They'll be nervous about a piece. They'll be asking me to pull back my cover note. In this year's issue, I ended up toning it down a little bit. So there's always this moment where I'm having to make a decision which is very individual about, are we running this story? Are we really going to say this? and it's on me. I'm very aware that it's completely on me if it falls flat, and it won't fall flat. There's going to be people that don't like folly. There are people who don't like folly, but they're not our audience. And if anything, we kind of have quite a lot of fun poking that bear, as it is anyway. I think one of the things in New Zealand we get quite caught up in is this idea that underrepresented is the same as being underprivileged. And Folly's courted controversy for being seen as elitist. Now, we never launched Folly to be an elitist publication. I wanted it to be beautifully produced so that it would be something you would give as a gift or leave on your coffee table. So it was always designed to be like a luxury item, but it was never designed to be elitist. And if you read any issue, you'll be able to see very quickly that it's absolutely not. There's a huge range of people in Folly. But we have been told or sort of set up by some media outlets to be slightly elitist, and our response to that's just been to lean into it, because ultimately the work we are publishing is work that would otherwise not be published in New Zealand. Now, whether or not that is work from a middle-aged white dude in Auckland who has a multi-million-dollar house, or a student, from Wanganui or something, it doesn't actually matter where people are from or what their background is, what their socioeconomic background is. We are just trying to curate the right tone and the right content for each issue. So that has been something that we get pushed on a lot, and usually the people that are pushing us on that, they've never opened it. They've never actually opened it and seen that there is a huge variety of voices in Folly.
I want to talk about AI though, Emily.
Okay.
Which is, we were chatting a little bit earlier, but people are using AI now for all sorts of things, to generate text, edit manuscripts, for example. What do you think its role should be in the literary and publishing worlds, and where do you sit on the tool versus threat debate that is unfurling everywhere now?
So my personal view is that writing and the art of writing is going to split quite clearly between writing for commercial professional purposes and writing as art. And I'm seeing that playing out for myself, but also just having a background in public relations and comms. Suddenly the way that content is created depends on the purpose of that content. So AI has a place in the workplace, and that's not going to go away. The controversy is about how it's used in the literary or the artistic sense. Look, there's a grey area. There's going to be people that are using it because they're writing to market, they're writing to ebooks, they're turning the stuff around fast, and that makes sense. But there's always going to be I do think most people who write for passion, very firm boundaries about where they let AI in. For instance, I'm off to the Frankfurt Book Fair next week, and I've been inundated with AI companies who are at Frankfurt wanting to sell their wares to me as a publisher. And the Frankfurt Book Fair itself is hosting events about AI and publishing.
Wow.
The conversations I've had internationally with US commentators in this space is that there is a place for AI in publishing, and where that comes in is helping with the slush pile, and also probably in editing. The editing space. So very, very clear boundaries. We personally at Folly don't use it yet. Obviously for marketing, PR, comms, everyone in marketing, PR, comms uses a bit of AI, but in terms of how we deal with our submissions, it's all just 100% human. But I'll be watching really closely, because ultimately, and I've been saying this to a few people, and sorry I'm taking a little bit longer here than I should have, when you're a human, you've had to work a 40-hour week, you're tired, you've got kids, whatever's going on in your life, that's going to impact how much attention you give a submission. So if I'm reading a submission on a Saturday morning with a coffee, I'm probably going to be looking at it with a far more positive outlook than at the end of a long week when I'm tired and I'm like, ugh, I haven't done my reading hours this week, I've got to get through 20 submissions tonight. And what I've noticed with the Folly reading team is the yes and no tags are so dependent on where people are at. And there is a place, I do think, in that submission process at some point where AI can actually make sure that the human emotions and fatigue are not impacting a submission's chance of getting through to the next layer. Jane Friedman, she's a US commentator, said to me, imagine if instead of waiting 6-8 weeks to hear back from a publisher, you heard back within 24 hours saying, confirmation, this met this criteria and therefore it's going to a human, you'll hear back in 2 weeks. Or, it hasn't met this criteria, it's going to a human for second opinion, you'll hear back in 2 months. just so much more certainty for writers.
On writers, you also run the Writers Studio, Wellington Writers Studio here on Cuba Street in Berry Building, beautiful historic heritage listed building, I think,
Yes,
on
it
Cuba
is.
Street. Do you think every writer, Emily, needs a community, or can solitude still be the engine of creation?
I think solitude is always the engine of creation. But what I've noticed at the Berry Building is people come for the community. We've got a lot of members who live alone, whose children have moved out of home, or they've maybe got very young children at home and they're trying to escape from that noise. And there is, writing is it can be so lonely and it's so hard that, yes, having a community and knowing it's there, I am told from my members, has led to far more productivity.
That leans in quite well to this question. What does it mean to sustain a literary venture today, Emily, like as a business? Is it more about survival, or is it about creating something bigger than yourself?
It's definitely about creating something bigger than myself. In terms of what does it mean, I'm fortunate in that I've had a career that's enabled me to invest in things I believe in, like the arts. So, the reason that we are not in survival is because I have a career and I can afford to fund this to some extent. I mean, we work to a tight budget. It's not a huge budget at all, but that means that we're not in survival mode. We aren't applying for lots of grants. We apply for very few grants, and we are working towards financial viability for this journal so that it can be bigger than me, so that if I need to step back, it can run itself.
I also wanted to ask you, Emily, you mentioned earlier this idea of online trolling, I think
Yes.
as a form of art itself. I wanted to get in a bit deeper to that. What do you mean exactly by that? And is there value in reframing something that's potentially destructive or disruptive as creative?
So our lead essay this year, and again, I love that we never know what's going to come out of these interviews, with Kirsha Kashal, who is the American artist I mentioned, ended up being all about online trolling as an art form and tying into this idea of cultural acupuncture. So the trolls are out there, that they don't like you for certain reasons. So instead of avoiding the controversy, instead of doing things that won't rack them up, actually purposely doing something that will annoy them. So for instance, a lot of people took exception to Folly selling luxury bathrobes as a
Okay.
fundraising initiative. So for fun, I put a post up earlier this year on Instagram talking about, how do we build a financially viable journal? One of the titles was, sell luxury products. And the comments were just so ugly and toxic. But because I had done it purposely to provoke a reaction, we could sit there and laugh and be like, they bought it. They are responding. They're getting upset about the fact that we're fundraising. Essentially the trolling was, because when you look at it as it's like an ego hit, right? When people are nasty to you online, you're like, what? No one goes out trying to upset people, generally. But then when you flip it around, you think, okay, rather than try to just be really bland and not offend anyone, let's just do what we're doing and welcome the trolls in. And them coming in and adding to the debate and calling us pretentious wankers, great. That's hilarious. Let's play up to that.
Totally. And that's also a reclamation of power as well. I think there's room for everyone under the bridge, trolls included.
Totally. And so the essay with Kirsha was ended up all being about ayahuasca and online trolling, and the link between an ayahuasca trip and online trolling being ego destruction.
Right. So interesting. How do art, literature, philosophy, politics, all of these things, Emily, speak to one another in Folly between the pieces? And are there moments of clashing also?
They're designed to clash. We had one American reviewer say, this is a really strange curation, very positively, and then gave us a great review. it's designed to clash. So, for instance, this year we've got Paul Conway, who's the chief economist at the Reserve Bank, and he's sandwiched right in the middle of the journal where we've put all of the quite raunchy stories. So I think his interview comes right before or after some short story called, like, At Least My Pussy's Smooth. And it's, this is all on purpose, right? Because you want to get people into, like, a playful mood, and then read about economic policy. And then just when they're starting to get like, oh, maybe this is a bit boring, give them something else to read.
Right.
So it's purposely clashing.
If you had to choose one idea, Emily, from this year's issue that you hope stays with readers long after they've closed the journal, what would it be?
It would be this concept that came up in the Kirsha Kashal interview about privilege, and the fact that just because someone has privilege, whatever sort of privilege that is, doesn't mean that they can't create art which has value to society. The idea of someone being privileged doesn't mean that they are a bad person. It doesn't mean that they're not doing good things for society. You can be privileged and you can be leading a certain lifestyle. You can enjoy some fizzy drink in a fancy glass occasionally, and still be making art, and making art that has value to society.
I think just lastly, Emily, you might have brought an object in from your creative life to share with us. What is it, and why did you bring it in today? Why does it matter to you?
I brought in the current cantamelon that I'm using.
I love it.
This is a little phone bracelet. It's got skulls on it.
It's beautiful pastel colours.
I designed it, and we had them made up in Wellington. These ones were on sale at World, but they're not on our website. And these phone chains, they fund folly.
Oh, okay.
So most of them are made in New Zealand. I discovered them in Paris, and they actually helped us get through issue 2.
Really?
Paid for a lot of our production costs.
Isn't that incredible technology funding literature? I
know.
suppose.
It's a little bit random, but at that point no one in New Zealand was selling phone chains, so we thought, well, let's try it out and see what happens.
I need to get a phone chain. Maybe I need to get on this buzz. Can you customize your own colours with those? Or
yeah, we can totally
the
do
jewels,
bespoke.
the beads,
I'll send you some to try
stars,
out.
Please. I just want to see oh my God.
My
So glam.
daughter's put a little note which I put inside my case.
Oh, it's so sweet. Do you just wear it around your wrists, Emily?
This one I do. So the reason I've got this one on is because we had a cocktail party on Friday night and I haven't changed it. So, when you're at a cocktail party, it means you're not...
It's like a bag.
Yeah,
almost.
and then I could just, take photos when I needed to.
Love it.
But usually, most of the time, I have a longer one on so that I can throw it on like a handbag.
I always wear one when I'm traveling, but it's like the really long necklace so
Yes.
that when I have Google Maps, I can navigate and just like let my phone drop and then you just make a call or something.
I couldn't imagine life without them now.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming in today, Emily. It's been such a cool chat.
It has been. Thank you very much.
That was Emily Makere Broadmore, founder and editor of Folly. I'm André Chumko, and this was Articulate. Thanks for joining us for another conversation at the intersection of art, ideas, and the wider world. If you want to watch more episodes like this, visit our YouTube channel at thepost-nz or explore our archive at thepost.co.nz/articulate. I'll see you next time.